It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ali Mattu. He is a clinical psychologist who has treated anxiety, obsessive-compulsive, and repetitive behavior disorders using cognitive behavioral therapy. In 2020, he shifted his focus to creating media for those who cannot access or afford effective mental health care. Dr. Mattu is considered a forward thinker in psychology. He believes social support from friends, family, and strangers is our greatest strength, and I might add, spiritual communities. He lives in the Bay Area with his wife, daughter, and son. Please welcome Dr. Ali Mattu.
Good. Let me see if I got this right. Good morning, Unity. There we go. Did I do that right? Yeah. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite thing that I get to do, to connect with people I don't know, share a little bit of what I do know, and understand what your concerns are, and maybe we can do something good together this morning. What I have never experienced before is such a perfect setting of the stage of what to talk about. So Clay, I have to thank you for your affirmation this morning. I could really sit down and we could just hear that affirmation again, because I think it summarizes everything I'm going to be talking about. So thank you for that. What a beautiful way to start this morning. So I am an anxious psychologist. So what does that actually mean? There are two components of that. And the first one is I am a specialist in treating anxiety disorders. I've treated every type of anxiety disorder out there. I have treated people as young as 5 and as old as 75. I have a good sense of what anxiety is and how to help people with it. But anxiety has also been a big part of my life. And this talk today, I'm going to share my ups and downs and also give you a little bit behind the scenes of how you can apply some of this stuff that I do in my professional life to your life. I'm also going to share the most important thing I've learned about anxiety, and it's not what you expect, so stay tuned for that one. But first, let's go back to the 80s and check out this cute kid right over there. That is me. I think that is, I'm not sure if that's kindergarten or first grade. It's sometime around then. And at home, I was an incredibly chatty kid. My parents could not shut me up. My brother and I, we would play all day. I'd have a million questions. I was this super chatty kid. But outside, literally when we went outside anywhere, it's a different story. I would freeze. When I was meeting new people, I would completely freeze. Usually, I'd try to hide behind my dad so that I wouldn't have to look anyone in the eye. And if people asked me questions, I was just quiet. I have this visceral memory of my parents taking me to Sunday school, and I refused to enter those doors. I was outside just crying, so scared of all the people, of who I would meet, of what was going to happen. I would just freeze. What would happen to most people, most kids, is you would enter a situation, you get a little anxious, but with time you'd kind of feel better. But for me, I noticed things were different. Anxiety would spike up high and then kind of stay there for a while. I didn't really like that feeling. And so when I started school, when I started kindergarten, things got a lot worse. And I would just not speak. So my kindergarten teacher thought I couldn't speak English. So she put me in ESL. Schools in the 80s. Different situation. They could have asked my parents. No. Now, you might be wondering, how come your parents didn't realize you're in ESL? Because I didn't tell them. Communication breakdown all over the place here. Now, I stayed in ESL for about 3 months, and I stayed in ESL until the teachers figured out that I completely understood everything they were saying, because they noticed me noticing them making fun of one of the kids for not being able to still figure out his right hand from his left hand. They were kind of making fun of him, and I looked at him, and I looked at them, and I kind of looked at my hands, and they're like, uh-oh, Ali knows what we're talking about. So they put me back in kindergarten, took me out of ESL, and I sort of stayed there and relied upon other people to speak for me. And this was very hard. I hated it. Going forward to first grade, I got invited to a party. This girl invited me to a party, her birthday party. It's not high school. This is a first grade birthday party. Nothing too exciting. I didn't realize it at the time, but the entire class got invited. I thought I was so special. And so it was a pool party. This is a very accurate reproduction of that scene. And I was excited, looking forward to it all week long. I show up, and it seems like most people are already there by the pool. And so I'm very excited, and I change into my swim trunks, and I come out, and then there I am, and then I'm going to jump into the pool. And I jump into the pool, and then everyone starts laughing. And then I freeze. I feel that sense of anxiety again, and I'm thinking, oh no, what happened? It's not what you think. My swim trunks stayed on. It's nothing that crazy. But what happened is I forgot to take my socks off. I was so excited. I was so looking forward to this, and I just jumped in the pool with my socks on, and the image I have is everyone pointing and laughing. I never let that happen again. Never let that happen. What does that mean? I never went to birthday parties again. I did not show up. I knew, I learned something that day, that yeah, my anxiety spikes up really quickly, but when it's up that high, if I just avoid the situation, I won't get anxious. That makes sense, right? Okay, anxiety makes me feel bad, I just won't get anxious. I'll avoid those situations. Middle school really complicated all of this, as it does for everything. There I am, still looking kind of cute. What I think is so fascinating to me, maybe those of you who grew up in the 90s will relate to this, but I'm wearing a No Fear shirt. Did anyone here have those yeah, a few people, right? That was this huge brand, No Fear. And why am I wearing that? I guess to me, it was like, no fear. Yeah, I'm going to avoid those situations, so no fear. Makes sense. But I was really into Star Trek at this time. We were actually, we got a lot of Trekkies here. Yeah. I just had a conversation with Tom this morning. I was asking about the architecture here. I had no idea that so many buildings in this area belong to the naval base. And Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, wanted to set Star Trek, the Starfleet headquarters in the San Francisco Bay Area because it was this military city that also had these values of inclusivity and diversity. And so I was thinking about that here and how wonderful it is to have this connection being here with all of you, but also this connection to this thing I love, Star Trek. Anyways, I was really into Star Trek, and there was these kids in middle school who once a month would dress up as Captain Kirk, as Spock, as Uhura, and they would come to school and just kind of celebrate Star Trek. And I so wanted to be friends with them, but I was too anxious, too scared to talk to them, so I never did. And one day, I was going to my lockers to get a book, and I noticed those 3 kids dressed up as Star Trek characters were getting bullied. They were getting picked on. Someone grabbed them and threw them into the lockers and saying horrible things to them. And I froze, and I was so scared. I wanted to say something. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to do something, and I couldn't. I was frozen. I was stuck. I kept thinking about all these horrible things that might happen. And I felt terrible about that. Not only did I never make a connection for these people, but when they were being hurt, I didn't stand up for them. This is my most hated picture of me for my whole life. But it kind of captures how I felt in that moment and how I felt in middle school. I felt alone. Where is everyone in this picture? First off, who took this picture? Where is everyone? Why am I so alone? And I'm so desperately trying to look cool. I've got the hat. I never wore hats, but this day I did, and I wore it backwards trying to look cool. It's not working for me. But this really captures how alone and how terrible I felt about myself. And this is where I started to feel depressed. Like there's something very wrong with me. And I hated myself. I hated feeling that way. I hated that lack of connection. Anxiety for me felt like I was at a rock concert. But for a band I completely hate. Like, I don't want to be there. The music is blasting. I am feeling all those sensations on my chest. Everyone else seems to be having a good time, but I don't want to be hearing this band. I don't want to be hearing this music. I'm waiting for this to be over. I am trying to find a way out. I want to slip out and try to make sure nobody notices me, that I'm leaving here. And I am not the only one who feels this way. In fact, I'm sure some of you are as well. I just want to share this quote, or this part of this scientific article. About 33.7% of the population of the world will at some point in their life experience an anxiety disorder. 33.7%. Problems with anxiety are the most common mental health problem in the world. Many of us struggle this way, as I did myself. So I want you to think about this, and I want you to think about the last 2 weeks. I'm just going to ask you 2 questions. You don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to participate. This is something you can just kind of do in your head. So think about the last 2 weeks. And I want you to think about how often have you been feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge? Over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been feeling this way? 0, not at all. 1, several days. 2, more than half the days. 3, nearly every day. So do you all have a number in your head? How often you've been feeling this way? Okay, great. Now, how often have you not been able to stop or control your worries? How often have you not been able to stop or control your worries? Think about the number right over there. And this is the hardest part of this morning. I'm going to ask you to add those 2 numbers together. Very complicated math. Okay. Now, 0 to 2 is pretty typical. You might be experiencing a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of difficulty with worries. 3 to 6, though, if you're getting in that territory, you might be struggling with anxiety. It might be getting in the way of your life. For me, everything changed when I got to high school. I signed up for public speaking. Why did I do that? You're thinking, what? Wow, courageous kid. No, I thought it was a class where you would study famous public speeches. I show up, first day of class, and Miss Georgiana Hayes says, "Welcome to public speaking, where you will conquer your fear of speaking in public." I froze. I was terrified. I kept thinking, I am going to freak out. People are going to realize how strange and weird this kid is, how he does not belong in the situation, and I was trying to find a way out. I felt like I was at that rock concert again that I did not want to be at, and I wanted to get out those doors. So I went to the office. I tried to figure out how to drop a class, and they said, "Ali, it's very easy. Take this form, have Miss Hayes sign it, tell her why you want to drop the class. She'll sign it, you can drop the class." Well, do you understand the struggle here? The problem is, I would have to talk to Miss Hayes. So I decided to avoid doing that. I was too scared to talk to the teacher to get out of public speaking. I did the thing that a lot of people with anxiety do, is you just sort of think there's some way you're going to get through this. There's some way. I'll just stick in this situation, and then somehow I'll be able to avoid it. I'll be able to get out of it somehow. That's what I kept telling myself. Well, we went through this whole process, and Miss Hayes completely changed my life. Because what she started to do is she started to have us practice talking to each other in very small groups. One-on-one, then a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger. But the real magic was after we had these brief conversations, she would then have us debrief with each other. So this is what you said. Now, what was actually going on in your head while you were sharing that? And one day, this is me in that class. I think I was giving a talk. We had to do a how-to speech, and I was giving a how-to speech on how to get rid of your bad breath. I don't know why. I had all these. I had Listerine there and a few other. I was demonstrating something. I don't know. But there was a kid who, let me back up here, set up the story. There was a kid, I was a freshman in high school, and this other kid was a senior taking this class. This is one of those rare classes where anyone could take it in high school. He was so cool. He was so cool. He had the cool jackets, the cool haircut, the cool vibe, just seemed so relaxed. Remember those people in high school that seemed like they just kind of floated through, and everything was just came so easily, and they were never stressed about anything? He was that guy, and I got paired up with him in this small group of 3, where we all had to give these 2-minute talks and then debrief with each other. Oh my gosh, I was so intimidated, but also excited just to be near him in this group. He gave this talk, nailed it. I thought he was so captivating, so interesting. And then we debriefed, and he thought he did a stupid job. He thought he was so dumb and so clumsy with his words. And this was unbelievable to me. But it was very clear that he felt this way. And so I thought, if he thinks he's stupid, and he's clearly not, and if he thinks he did a bad job and he clearly didn't, then maybe I'm not that stupid either. It was a moment that changed the trajectory of my life, because it made me realize all these things that I've been thinking and believing about myself, maybe they're not true. Because if everyone thinks they're so stupid in this situation of public speaking, then we all can't possibly be stupid. Maybe our brains are just telling us something. And this is where I learned that anxiety is not actually an emotional problem. It's an attention problem. I 100% believe this in all my work with everyone I've ever seen, and also in my own life, that anxiety is not an emotional problem. It's an attention problem. So what anxiety does when you're very anxious, it turns your attention inward. It turns your attention on what's happening inside your body, and it turns your attention onto all these thoughts. And what are those thoughts when you're anxious? Well, they increase threat, they increase danger, they make you freak out about all those sensations you're having in your body. And the biggest problem with anxiety, when we struggle with it, is it closes you off to new information. It closes you off to the perspective of others. It closes you off to what's actually happening in the real world. And all the new treatments for anxiety, they emphasize shifting your attention back to what matters, shifting your attention so you get actual real-world information, to help you get unstuck with your thoughts, to help you to be in the present moment, and to help you gain real-world information about the things you actually are scared of, which is why I thought this affirmation in this morning was so beautiful, opening yourself up, and the real definition of what courage is. It was beautiful. no matter the type of anxiety problem, whether it's a fear of evaluation, like selective mutism, which is what I had, selective mutism, fancy way of saying in certain situations you're mute, you don't talk. When I first heard the term, I thought it was like this X-Men superpower, selective mutism. No, someone just pressed mute on me. Social anxiety or thinking about disasters, whether it's phobias, separation anxiety, difficulty with control like panic or agoraphobia, or if you struggle with uncertainty like generalized anxiety disorder or OCD. And regardless of whatever the anxiety problem is, it's all about attention and where your attention is placed. I want to give you 3 examples of how I've done this in my career. And if you want to learn more, come to the workshop. We're going to dive into how you can apply this stuff to your own life. Getting unstuck with your thoughts. I worked with a person who was a young adult trying to figure out, should I marry this person or not? Should I marry this person or not? Should I marry this person or not? And they were struggling so much with this doubt and not knowing. And so much of our treatment became, how can you make small decisions right now to get you through the next day and tolerate some of this uncertainty so you're not getting stuck in your head? Focusing on the present, what does that mean? I was working with someone who has social anxiety, and one of the best treatments for social anxiety is actually group treatment, where you are in groups with other people, just like Ms. Hayes did for me in public speaking, learning from each other, getting feedback from each other. And I worked with someone who the first day came into my group, and the moment we started talking and it came to her turn to share, she started crying and ran out of the room. This is what I think happens to a lot of people who have anxiety. They have a hard time being in those moments, so they actually can get that information that they need. So much of our work became how to ground yourself, how to be present in the moment. How do we bring that anxiety down just a notch so you're able to actually focus and be here and be present? And getting real-world information. I worked with another individual who was really struggling with obsessive-compulsive disorder. And his brain would tell him when he heard a bump when he was driving that maybe I hit someone. Anytime he heard a sound, he wanted to stop, turn around, and check to make sure he didn't hit someone. This person was in a lot of pain with this OCD. And so what did we do? Well, I got some bowling balls. I got some bats. I got a lot of things that roll around in your trunk. And we loaded his trunk with a lot of stuff. And then we went driving. And you might be thinking, what the heck are you doing, Ollie? Well, we are recreating a lot of these sounds and helping him get real-world information about what actually happens. And what he needed to learn is that I can hear these sounds and ride out that uncertainty. Because if the sound happens, I don't need to turn around and come back and check, but I can learn to live with this uncertainty. And that's what I mean about real-world information. I wish I could just tell him that. You can't. This stuff has to be new learning experiences you get from inside. So everything about overcoming fear, let's scratch that out. And what we're really talking about is getting good at fear. Not trying to get rid of it, not trying to eliminate it, but get good at it. I'm going to share one last story with you. Social anxiety, right? Overcame that, Ms. Hayes, wonderful stuff. And you might be looking at me now going, well, he's talking on stage. He must be totally fine with this kind of stuff now, right? Well, just a few years ago, the last thing I did before I moved to California, literally on the last day before I flew here in 2019, I was doing a collaboration with HBO. And it was called Doctor Commentaries, where I was reacting to some of the mental health themes in their programming. It was very cool. We were recording it at this facility in Brooklyn, which when I showed up to the dressing room, they said, you know who sat there a few years ago? I said, who? I said, Beyonce. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And they said, yes, this is where Beyonce filmed Single Ladies. So no pressure. So I'm starting to feel that heat. I'm starting to turn it inside and thinking, what am I doing here? What is happening here? Here's the set. And I sat down in that set, and there are probably about 30 people all around me looking at me, hot lights, cameras. It's a very intense situation. And I had never been in this sophisticated of a thing where Beyonce was once. So I start getting anxious. Now, what happens to me when I get really anxious now? Well, I start sweating. That's a problem because the director of usually how do I cope with that? Well, I wear one of these so no one can see my giant pit stains. Well, the director of this said, Ollie, I've seen a lot of your videos, and I've never seen you really without a jacket on, so I want to do something different. Something, great. I know how this is going to, my attention starts to go in, and I start thinking about everything that's going to go wrong. Well, half an hour into the shoot, I am sweating a lot. The director pulls me aside and says, hey, Ollie, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you're sweating. And it's become pretty hard for me to shoot around your pit stains. So we have to come up with a solution here. I am trying so hard to be focused out, but the attention keeps turning back in. Well, so what do? The makeup artist comes and says, I'm going to be able to help you with this. So she takes me out, going back into that dressing room, Beyonce's dressing room. That's the only way I refer to it now. And she says, I want you to take off your shirt, and I'm gonna do something. And I go, okay. So she takes it off, or she doesn't take it off. I take it off. I give it to her. It's a G-rated film shoot here. Like, where is this going? She takes a hairdryer, dries it. She goes to her makeup bag, pulls out a maxi pad, tapes it to the armpits, puts it back on, and says, now you're good. Now, hopefully you can go watch this now, and you'll know the behind the scenes of how this made. Why am I sharing this story with you? Anxiety is something I've never been able to escape in my life. As much as I have overcome it, I still experience it. And I still experience it socially. What I've learned, though, is there are so many ways that I can deal with it, cope with it, and be back in that present moment with you all and shift my attention back. Whatever helps you to bring your attention back to that present moment, that is a fantastic way to deal with anxiety. So if you're scared, if you're worried, if you're anxious, I want you to ask yourself this. Am I living by my thoughts and feelings, or am I living by what my eyes and my ears are revealing to me? That is what I want you to remember. Am I living by my thoughts and feelings, all that stuff inside, or am I living by what my eyes and my ears are revealing to me? Simpler way. Is my attention turning in, or is my attention turning out? Okay. If you want to learn how to do more of this yourself, come to the workshop. I would love to see you all. And last but not least, I would love your feedback on this talk. If you take a picture of this, it'll take you to my survey, and as a thank you, you'll get a little handout tomorrow, which has all the details of the stuff I've mentioned. Thank you.